Hey everyone, welcome to this session on product launches. This is Dan. I wanted to start by saying this is pre-recorded. This isn't live, so I'm recording this a couple weeks ahead of time, but would be happy to answer any questions you have. The best way of getting in touch with me is just tweet at me, and I actually put my handle _ Daniel J. Murphy in the bottom left corner there. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can also look me up on LinkedIn. I'm Daniel J. Murphy. Again, feel free to reach out. Love hearing feedback, and also love to dive deeper on any of this stuff. So today's topic is how to use storytelling in product launches, and I'm going to teach you 3 frameworks you can copy to craft your launch story. As I mentioned before, I'm Dan. So I'm the director of marketing at Privy.com. I lead both brand and product marketing at Privy. Formerly of Drift, I led the product marketing efforts over there. I was named one of the top 50 product marketing influencers of 2019, so last year. And then the most important thing, because we're going to talk about product launches, is I have a lot of experience there. I've actually launched over 60, and you can also see this logo in the bottom right corner at the productlaunchmasterclass.com. That's my class, my course that I put together on product launches. I actually just launched about a month or two ago. It's 2020. It's hard to remember everything in terms of timing, but yeah, about a month or two ago, launched that, and you can check that out. This session is actually an excerpt from that. So I took one of the chapters. The course is 78 minutes long, and it's a lot of different stuff. But this is one of the chapters on positioning. So you're gonna hear basically my take and how to do your positioning for your launches. So let's start with why are we talking about product launches in a business storytelling conference? Well, the answer is really I can't think of a better way to tell your product story than with a launch. Obviously, I'm a little biased because I have a lot of experience here and I spend a lot of time on launches, but I've done so many of them. And the best way of telling your product's story, whether that's a brand new product or a feature or a solution or something else, is really with a launch. And so, when we talk about storytelling in launches, we often use this term positioning, right? What is positioning? And that's really what we're going to dive into today. Positioning is really just about telling the right story, right? That's what it's all about. It's setting the right context. Okay, so let's talk about specifically what you're going to learn in the next 30 minutes or so. So how to find the right story using my 3 positioning frameworks that I use every time I'm working on a launch. We'll look at product launch examples from Basecamp and Apple. We're actually going to show you one from Privy as well. All of those are examples that you can take and you can use in your next launch. And then why you should be organizing more product launches for your business, even if you're not a marketing expert. By the way, my presumption here is that most of you aren't marketing experts. I know you're CEOs, you're founders, maybe you're investors. This is all geared towards people that aren't marketing experts. So don't worry, you don't have to be a VP of marketing to get something out of this session today. So this, like I said, this is an excerpt from my course. Usually by the time someone gets to this chapter and is looking at learning about positioning, I've kind of given them a lot of context around launches and taught my framework. But there's really 3 main parts. I just want to sort of quickly set the stage here. There's really 3 main parts of a product launch. And again, this is the framework that I teach in my course. It's setting a launch goal and finding your launch audience, then writing your positioning that tells a compelling story, and then executing your launch. Those are sort of the 3 phases. This one is really geared towards that, writing the positioning that tells a compelling story. That's what we're going to be talking about today. And by the way, I've referenced, I think a couple times now, these 3 frameworks that I'm going to teach you today. Let me just quickly tell you, these are the 3 frameworks. So the NHS system, and I'll explain exactly what that is. We're going to talk about pain mapping. That's a framework that I want to teach you today. And then we're also going to talk about a story deck, which is something that you're going to need to do for your product launches. By the way, I also keep referencing this course, the productlaunchmasterclass.com. This is just a screenshot from the homepage. The course is $99. But I'm actually going to tell you at the end of this session how you can get it for $59. So If you're interested, if this content is helpful, if you're planning launches, I can give you my framework. I think it's helpful. Don't go buy it right now. What I would suggest is open up a new tab, theproductlaunchmasterclass.com, and then hang tight. I'm going to give you a way to get this course for only $59. Just stick around through the end of this course. Okay, so let's talk about positioning. One of the parts of product marketing I'm so fascinated with, and I love learning about it. I actually recently bought April Dunford's Obviously Awesome book. That's the name of the title, by the way. It's called Obviously Awesome. I'm actually holding it right here in my hand. I pulled it out to make sure I was telling the right story here. This is a tweet I shared a couple weeks ago about why positioning is so important. I just screenshot it. I didn't want to try to retell it in some other format. I just took a picture of the book, this chapter, this section of the book, and shared it because it's just so good. And I wanted to share it with you today, this story, because I think it's really important to understand why positioning is so important and why you want to invest your time into it and make sure you get it right. So this is the story from April Dunford's book. So there's this chapter, and she's talking about how positioning is really about context setting and how that's so important. And then she starts telling the story of how the Washington Post did this experiment with an internationally acclaimed violinist. His name is Joshua Bell. And his music was described in papers or in magazines as like, does nothing more than tell human beings why they live, right? So clearly this guy's pretty good at playing the violin. He's world renowned. And he regularly sells out concert halls, right? For $300 or more a ticket. Thousands of people sells them for $300 a ticket. This guy is clearly one of the best. So they ran this experiment where they took him and they had him basically set up as a street performer outside of a subway station in Washington, D.C. And they just wanted to see what would happen. How would people react, right? Like there was no signs that said this guy is who he is. He's just some guy with the violin playing on the sidewalk, as many of us, who take the subway see every single day. And so he sat out there for 45 minutes. And they actually, staged it and they watched it and they counted over 1,000 people walked by in that 45 minutes. Only 27 gave him money and only 7 paused to listen, right? He made a total of like $32 while he was street performing, right? And remember, this is a world-renowned guy whose music has been described as does nothing more than tell human beings why they live, and who regularly sells out concert halls for $300 a ticket, right? And the guy makes $32 just doing a street performing, right? In fact, there was part of this story where the shoe stand guy who in the subway, who's somewhere nearby, they interviewed him after, and he was saying he was so annoyed about how loud the music was, he almost called the cops on this guy, this world-renowned violinist, because no one knows who he is, right? And that's the whole thing about context setting and positioning, right? The story is basically without the right context, you don't really know, right? That's the same product. It's the same guy playing probably the same violin that he plays in concert halls where he's performing for thousands of people, sold out audiences. And so when we talk about positioning, like the right positioning has the power to change your business outcome, right? Just look at Joshua and, the context setting of him sitting as a street performer versus, on stage in a tuxedo, probably playing for an audience. It's a huge difference. So the right positioning has the power to change your business outcome. I just want you to know that. I want you to believe that. And April Dunford, this book is amazing. She tells a lot of different stories of businesses and examples where the right positioning did make a big difference in the outcome. Highly recommended. Again, that book is called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. Okay, let's get into my frameworks. Let's talk about these. So my goal isn't to, I'm not going to give you, I think April Dunford's book, let's see, it's probably 300. No, it's not 300 pages. It's only about 172. So it's reasonable, but I only have 30 minutes with you. So I'm not going to go in crazy detail, but I want to give you some basics. And that's what my course teaches you, some basics for setting up a product launch and doing the positioning, especially for people that aren't marketing experts, right? So this is the first framework. I just call it the NHS positioning framework. You can see, obviously, it's named after, the components of it, name, headline, story. So it's nothing really fancy. Maybe I could have come up with a fancier name for it, but I just wanted to keep it simple so you'd remember it. So the name, the headline, and the story. These are the most important parts of the positioning for your product launch, right? What is the name of the product? What is the headline you want to put on a blog post or press release, right? And then what is the story? In a few short paragraphs, what is the story which focuses on these main benefits? That's the NHS framework, right? I'm going to show you today how to do it. Before we talk about how to get to find those the name, the headline, the story, let's look at a couple examples, right? So this is Apple. This is a press release from 2001 when they launched the iPod. Obviously, that was a very long time ago, and so the positioning might not be as resonant with you today because we live in a different world where we don't have CD players, but there, the product name, Apple's iPod, the headline, ultra portable MP3 music player puts 1,000 songs in your pocket. And then the benefits, if we were to read this, it starts with Apple today introduced iPod, a breakthrough MP3 music player that packs up to 1,000 CD quality songs into an ultra portable 6.5 ounce design that fits in your pocket, blah, 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 right? And you can actually see what they did in their press release. They're telling their story, right? They're including the main benefits. They've put that the most important benefit in the headline, which is that, it basically replaces having to have a 1,000 song or a million, not a million, but, dozens of CDs, right? And you just puts it right in your pocket, right? So I actually stole this framework from them, right? This is how they do it. They always do a press release with a big product launch. And so if we look at another example, MacBook Air. Apple introduces MacBook Air, the world's thinnest notebook. This is a little bit different. I'm not going to read this one for the sake of time, but if you look at it, they include the main benefits in their story of what they're launching, and they obviously have a killer headline here: the thinnest notebook. Right? Clearly, they're positioning around. At this point, I believe this was in 2008, I want to say. At this point, people that have laptops, they can use it. They're big, they're clunky, they're heavy. You're commuting, you got to put in a backpack or a briefcase or whatever. And so, they're obviously positioning around. They want to be the thinnest. And guess what? They're the world's thinnest, so they can own that space. So positioning can be extremely powerful. Let's talk about names, right? How do you decide on what the name of your product should be? I actually have a couple of recommendations here. So the most important thing I'd say is don't worry about naming it something that users will understand or like even, right? Or know or understand. Like the job of the name isn't to, describe the benefit. It isn't. It's to be aspirational. It's to be memorable above all. And it's to hopefully fit your brand. It's supposed to be, it's not supposed to be like super user friendly, just that someone would, probably give you the name. So focus on things like, iPod and AirBook are good examples. Those are memorable names. AirBook kind of tells you a little bit about the benefit, but really it's like the idea is that no customer would have use those words to describe either of those products prior. Find something, but they're going to read and they're going to remember, and then they're going to come back later and probably investigate it further. Your headline. So this is a little bit different. This is actually different advice from the name. So for the name, it doesn't matter as much about the benefit. For the headline, it absolutely does. And the way to think about your headline, the way to approach it is like what you want your headline to do is stop someone dead in their tracks. Someone that just kind of like, I was just sitting on my couch, had Twitter open. I was just scrolling through, just checking on my news feed, what's going on in the world. It's got to be a headline that, like, if I'm scrolling through it, I stop and I say, wow, okay, I got to open this and I got to read this right now. That's the mission with your headline, right? And remember when you're writing your headline, you know behind the scenes why you think it's so important, but no one is actively on Twitter looking for, what you're launching, right? Very rarely that happens. So it's got to be something that's like they stop, they realize they need to read it, and they have to click on it. Apple did a great job with that with, the MacBook Air, the world's thinnest notebook, and with the iPod, ultra portable MP3 music player that puts 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? Really emphasizing that main benefit, especially in 2001. If I'm using CD players and I need to, I'm carrying around dozens, and I see that headline. This is pre-Twitter, but I see that headline somewhere that says "Put 1,000 songs in your pocket with an MP3 player." That's going to make me stop and pay attention. And then how to find your benefits. So I'm going to talk about this in the second framework in a second, but the thing here is your business. I think you probably know your core benefits that your product delivers on. Remember those. Obviously hopefully you validated all those with your customers. But the thing is with your benefits, well, a couple things. One is you should have 3 main benefits, and that's just a simple copywriting rule. Like people are fascinated with things that come in 3. So I would have 3 main benefits when you're working up what those are. And the way to get them is to work with your beta users, probably your product managers if they're involved, or your engineers, people that are talking to customers. Obviously, talking to customers if you're already in market is really important. I would say product managers can be helpful, but they shouldn't be the end all be all for defining what those benefits are. And so let's talk about my second framework actually. When this is pain mapping, what you really want to do is find the pain and tie it to a solution. So this is an exercise I would suggest you do. Again, whether you're a product marketer, product manager, CEO, investor, whatever, like this is the way of doing it as from a pain mapping is the framework I would suggest. And it's relatively simple, right? Like pains are way easier to identify with customers than benefits. Like they're not calling you up saying like, this is the benefit I need, this is the solution I need. They're calling you up saying, hey, these are the problems I have. This is what I need to solve. So I always use systems like Gong, which helps you record your calls. I've always used those, and I've actually gone in, and what I do is I'll go in and I'll look at calls that maybe reference the problem I'm looking for, or I'll just start listening to calls. And when I find that problem, when I hear someone say it, I just copy and paste. In Gong, you can actually get a transcript of the call, which is great. I just copy and paste exactly what they said, and I would put it on the left side here, right? So like pains, in this example, this is just some made up company, Infinify, made up demo company. But let's say, I'm a product marketer over there. And I see, I'm going through my calls and I hear someone say, I can't log in Infinify's app while I'm on working from my car, right? And let's say I'm the whole goal here, launch here is like we're launching a mobile app, right? So like the solution there is Infinify's new mobile app. You can access it from anywhere at any time, right? So now I've mapped my solution to the pain point of the words directly out of my customer's mouth, and I've tied it to a solution. Again, you want to try to come up with 3 of those, and that's going to be weaved into your story. The other thing I want to say about, coming up with your positioning is that like you would go on right now and Google positioning templates, positioning documents, and you'll find, probably hundreds of thousands of different examples. I mean, I've used them plenty in my career, but I've since stopped using them as of a couple of years ago, because really what I realized with my product launches is that like when I'm working on positioning, a template doesn't really do a good job of telling the story. So I needed something else. And so what I like to do is a story deck, right? Because like when you think about a positioning doc, it's kind of like product tiers. Like a product tier is like, you have, you're going to run these activities for a product based on, if it's a brand new thing for the market or if you're copying a competitor, and you kind of have this like cookie cutter approach. Positioning docs don't really help you really dig into what is the problem you're solving and then come up with that story. And so the other part of it too with product positioning docs, or positioning templates, is they aren't visual, right? They don't help you come up with the visual element and compose that story. Whereas a story deck actually will. So this is my formula. I shared this not so long ago. Actually, this is a couple months old, but I shared this on LinkedIn a couple months ago. And I said, hey, this is my winning formula after having done like 60 plus product launches. I jot down the story that, after I've done that pain mapping and I've identified the main benefits and what is the story I want to tell, I just jot it down on paper. Maybe I put it in Evernote or I write it down on my notebook. And then I start turning that story into a deck. I don't use bullets, right? Like the traditional story deck, you see a little bit of that in this deck today, but I don't use a lot of bullet points. I really like to use images and headlines, so words and images to tell that story. And then what I do is I start recording it, like I'm doing right now. I'm recording this on Drift Video, this session. I do the exact same thing when I'm working on my story decks for my launches. I record myself and I do it again and again and again. What happens is every time I do it, I realize, oh wait, I should have done this way, or I could try to change this. I also will take the recordings and I'll send them to people, right? Not necessarily my boss or my CEO or something like that, but people that are actually on the front lines working with our customers, right? So that's one way that I approach it. Story decks is that third framework. So creating a story deck is way better than a positioning document. Here's an example. I kind of redacted half of it, so sorry about that. But basically, this is a real launch I did years ago, and this is really the template I was using for it. And this isn't going to help me craft that story, right? So when we talk about a story deck, this third framework that I think is really important for putting together your positioning for your launch, let's talk about some of the core components of what should be in that story deck. So what should you cover? So you first want to start with a problem. It should tie directly to your headline, right? So this was the headline for a launch we did, Privy Email, the fastest way to set up your email automation for your Shopify store. And then this was the hook. This was the problem we presented with. This is that we started. So basically, we launched. We're in e-commerce. We integrate, very closely with Shopify. A lot of Shopify merchants will use Privy. We basically led with MailChimp and Shopify. So the number one tool people were using for email, MailChimp. Well, guess what? These companies actually broke up and their integration no longer works. So we led with that in our launch. Hey, this integration no longer works. So check out Privy. We're actually the fastest way to set up your email automation for your Shopify store, right? We anchored around automation. And as I started talking about, the second part of the story deck, the second component is how is your product uniquely suited to solve that problem that you just presented? How are you the ones uniquely suited? Again, with Privy Email, we talked about how we integrate with Shopify, and that was helps merchants set up their email automation. Here's an example of it, right? Your abandoned cart sequence. This is something you'd set up in Privy Email. Will make you more money 24 hours a day without you doing a thing. Right? Our whole goal here is to anchor around small e-commerce businesses that don't have a lot of time. They've got to do a million different things so they can set up their email automation. It works for them 24 hours and makes them more money. That's exactly the message we wanted to hit to this audience. And then the third part of that story deck, how does your audience take advantage of this solution? And this is the CTA. This is straightforward. So with Privy Email, starts at just $13 a month for your first 1,000 contacts. And then $5 after that. No sending limits, no annual commitment. Right? That's how we take action. So that's really the story deck. Just to recap this positioning approach, start with pain mapping, right? Go in there and do the research, take the words right out of their mouth, and then tie that to the solutions of whatever it is you're launching. Then you work in your NHS positioning framework. From there, you can craft that into a story deck and then start recording that positioning. And eventually you'll have one final recording, which is the positioning, the definitive guide, and you take that and you go and you execute on your launch. I have a couple tips here. So first of all, this is a mistake a lot of product marketers make for the first time, or anyone managing a launch for the first time, they make this mistake. You don't want to reinvent your positioning along the way. Once you have that final positioning, you know your story, go tell the same story again and again. It's repetitive, but that's fine. If I'm launching a video, a blog post, and a customer email, and my story is that, Infinify's new mobile app is, work from anywhere, then I'm telling that story again and again and again. Different format, but I'm telling the same story again. I'm not reinventing it. I'm not trying different things. Something that happens a lot, or a question I get a lot when I talk to people about launches, is how do you know when your positioning is actually ready to launch? When is it done, right? And the trick here is that it's really, really tough. You never really know when it's like, there's never like a checkbox or like some definitive confirmation that it's done. But what I like to do is after I finish, well, actually, what I should say, let me start by, I had this problem of I would spend so much time working on my positioning. It was super painful. And my V1, like always would, it just took so long to get from 0 to something, right? To have like the first version of my positioning done. And then I would just steer at it and work on it. And I would write, I'd be staring at a Google Doc for days and days and days. And I'm wasting time really. And what I realized the best thing for me to do was like put aside my ego and trying to get it to like have a V1 that I'm proud of and ready to present. Like put that aside, take my V1 in whatever state it is, as long as it's, pretty good and it feels like, okay, this is something, and then go present it to my product managers, my sales reps, my CSMs, even customers if you have that opportunity. And I would go pitch to them. After you've done that many times, maybe half a dozen to a dozen times, your V2 just starts writing itself, right? Because you're realizing stuff every time you talk about it. You're getting feedback from the people you care most about feedback from, and then suddenly it just gets better. It's a faster way of producing that positioning. All right, so let me just recap all the stuff we just talked about. Start with pain mapping and then use the NHS framework to write your positioning. Make your product name memorable, right? Don't focus on a benefit. Make it a memorable name. That's what you should be focused on for the product name. Positioning docs don't tell a story, so try a deck and a video instead. I've used that for years, and that is the best process that I've found that works. Don't reinvent your positioning every time. Stay on script. Keep saying the same thing again and again. Be repetitive. That's what works, because that's what you want your customers to see. You want them to see the same message no matter what channel they're seeing your launch on. And then go pitch your V1. Don't wait. put your ego aside. Perfect is the enemy of the good. I did mention that I would give you this code. So if you do want my full course, that was a quick excerpt from it, specifically on positioning. That was one of, I think, 8 chapters. Plus, I have a launch teardown. Plus, I have this other tip on the 6 product launch secrets I would never give away for free. All of that is in my course. You can get it at theproductlaunchmasterclass.com. And if you use this code, getting to market, use that all caps, one word, getting to market. If you use that in checkout, you can get the course for just $59. Okay, so when I rehearsed this, I realized I had a couple more minutes. It looks like about 6 minutes, 6 minutes extra out, so I can talk a little bit more. What I thought would be most useful is, instead of giving you more positioning stuff, let's just look at a really good example. Basecamp is the example I love. They launched Hey this summer, and they nailed it. They had a huge launch. I thought their positioning was amazing. So I just wanted to talk about that really quickly. So there's really 2 jobs that their positioning had to do. The first was show that this is an innovative new product. And the second is to get people thinking about how bad Gmail is, right? So they're really competing with Gmail. So they have those 2 jobs, and they launched this. This is their homepage. This is what they launched when they went to market, and they made all this noise and got tens of thousands of people to sign up, right? So when you're thinking about, I got to do a video, I got to do all these graphics, I got to do all this stuff, look how simple this page is. It's just words, right? They just focused on the positioning, and it clearly worked for them. They had tens of thousands of people on their wait list, hundreds of thousands of people that actually got into the product. Huge success for them. I wanted to just go through this, and again, we only have a few minutes, but if you were to read through this letter, I'll just start it. It's 2020. We need to talk about email. Email gets a bad rap, but it shouldn't. Email's a treasure. It feels great to get an email from someone you care about, or a newsletter you enjoy, or an update from a service you like. That's how email used to feel all the time, but things change, right? So what they're doing here is, don't hate email itself, hate what it's become, right? Because they're selling an email product, and then they're basically going to present, hey, someone's ruined it for you. And here we go, right? You started getting stuff you didn't want from people you didn't know, blah, blah, blah. It's Gmail, it's Outlook, it's Yahoo and Apple. They just let it happen, right? They're the problem. And basically what they're saying is marketing ruined email, right? Email marketing kind of ruined it for everybody. And those that could have prevented it failed you. And then they get into, and yet email remains a wonder. Thanks to email, people across cultures, continents, like blah, blah. They're basically making it seem like, hey, there's still hope here. It just needs a savior. And guess what? With Hey, we've done just that. It's the redo, a rethink, a simplified, potent reintroduction of email, a fresh start, the way it should be. And it works on all these platforms. Guess what? Hey is that savior. So by the way, this whole thing is on their, or actually it might be down now, but it was on hey.com, their homepage. They might have moved it to another page, but go read this. This is just such a great example of really strong storytelling to position their product as this savior that's going to come in and solve a lot of problems. There's a little bit more here. I was going to talk about the second part, which is get people thinking about how bad Gmail is. And the other thing is, like, the way they did this and they presented it. So like, this is, they had this great story and they told these problems, but then they had this great tour. And again, think about how simple this is. This is just some words and some screenshots and some, little squiggly illustrations in the background, but they didn't overcomplicate this. We didn't reinvent the wheel, only email. They really position it in a really nice way. They talk about features like inbox. This launch is just a masterclass in positioning and telling a really compelling story in your product launch. So I'm just going to jump right back a couple slides. Give me 1 second. And I'm just going to tell you one more time, if you're interested in the course, just head over to the productlaunchmasterclass.com. You can get it for $59 if you use this code. It's getting to market. Again, I recommend a framework. That's why I published mine. That's why I made mine available. And I wanted to give you guys the opportunity to get it at a good rate, discounted rate. But if you have questions, you want to follow up with something, feel free to reach out to me. You can follow me at _ Daniel J. Murphy on Twitter, or feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any more questions.